I'm 29 years old, and one of the only things that's ever helped me clear my head is camping, not in crowded campgrounds or national parks, but deep, off-the-grid camping. The kind where you hike far enough into the wilderness that you don't see another soul for miles. I grew up in Northern California and have spent most of my adult life learning to find those rare, remote pockets where it still feels like you're the last person on Earth. This story happened a few months ago, right after a tough breakup. I was in a dark place mentally and desperately needed to be alone. So one day, I threw some gear into my truck and took off without much of a plan. I ended up heading toward a quiet riverside spot I'd found once before. It wasn't an official campsite, just a secluded bend in the river you could get to by following a half-hidden dirt road through a long stretch of nothing. I arrived late in the afternoon, but as soon as I turned down the dirt trail, my gut clenched. 2 trucks were already parked at the trailhead, one gray, one white. I couldn't see anyone nearby, but just knowing others were out there was enough to kill the solitude I was chasing. I sat in my truck for a minute, debating whether to leave and look for another spot. But eventually, I convinced myself it was a long stretch of river. Odds were they were camped far enough away that I wouldn't run into them. About 15 minutes downriver, I spotted 2 guys fishing. They looked exactly how you'd expect, bearded, rugged, a bit out of shape, dressed in heavy boots and flannel. But something about them was off. As I passed, one of them quickly threw a jacket over something on the ground. Then, trying too hard to sound casual, he called out something about how they were just target shooting cans and didn't mean to startle me. I just gave a polite nod and kept walking. The way he said it, rushed and awkward, kept replaying in my head. It wasn't the words, it was the delivery. Like he was scrambling to sound normal. I brushed it off. People out there can be socially weird, especially in remote places. I told myself not to overthink it and focused on finding a place to set up camp. Eventually, I found a tucked-away spot where the trail dipped out of sight, surrounded by thick trees. Not perfect, but secluded enough. I pitched my tent, pulled out a book, and tried to unwind. Light rain started falling not long after, so I slipped on my rain jacket and settled in, letting the soft patter and the rush of the river drown out my thoughts. Later, I wandered down to the riverbank to reflect. That's when I saw him, the same guy from earlier, across the water, alone this time. He waved at me. I hesitated but waved back, figuring it was safer to play friendly. Then he shouted across, asking for my name. Without thinking, I yelled back my real name, Anisha. He paused, then pulled something from his jacket. I thought it was a phone at first, but it was a disposable camera. Before I could react, he raised it and snapped a picture of me from across the river. Then, just like that, he turned and walked off. The whole thing gave me the creeps. The awkward vibe, the weird way he talked, and now this, taking a picture of me without asking. It was seriously unsettling. I decided to stay at camp for the rest of the night and avoid any further encounters. After the sun set, I crawled into my tent and tried to sleep, but my brain wouldn't stop spinning. The breakup. That guy. That camera. Every noise outside made me tense. Then, beneath the rain and the river, I started to hear something else, soft, uneven steps. Like someone carefully walking over wet ground. At first, I told myself it was just an animal or the wind. But it kept going. Circling my campsite. That was when my stomach dropped. I knew exactly who it was. I don't go into the woods unprepared. I grabbed the handgun I kept next to my sleeping bag, unzipped the tent, and stepped out into the rain. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I turned on my flashlight, scanned the trees, and there he was, standing just a few yards away, half hidden behind a tree. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. Just blank. Staring. And in his left hand, he was holding a small axe. For a second, I froze. Every instinct in me screamed run, but I forced myself to stay calm. I raised the gun and aimed it squarely at him. "Leave now," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "or I'll kill you." He didn't even flinch. He just mumbled something about how his friend Ivan told him not to come find me, and that he had to take care of Ivan. I didn't wait for more. I fired a warning shot into the trees above him. He staggered, clearly not expecting it. I aimed again and told him to drop the axe. This time, he obeyed. Relief hit me like a wave, but I knew it wasn't over. I ordered him to take off his shoes so he couldn't follow me easily, then made him empty his pockets and checked him for other weapons. When I was sure he was unarmed, I told him to grab my gear from the tent and toss it out in the open where I could see it. I packed what I needed in a rush, never taking my eyes off him. I threw the axe into my bag, left the tent behind, and flung his shoes into the dark. I told him to walk in the opposite direction, keeping the flashlight trained on him the entire time. As soon as he was out of sight, I turned and hiked as fast as I could back to my truck. That hike through the rainy woods, in the dark, knowing that man was still out there somewhere, that was the most terrifying part. When I finally reached my truck, both of the other vehicles were still there. I didn't stop. I threw my gear inside and sped off. As soon as I had service again, I called the police and reported everything, giving them the location as best I could. Months have passed, and I still don't know what came of it. I haven't gone looking for answers, either. But what chills me most is what he said about Ivan, that he had to take care of him. I don't even want to think about what that means. What I do know is this: if I hadn't been armed, I might not be alive to tell this story.